Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam is holding her first dialogue right now with members of the public. The session at the Queen Elizabeth Stadium in Wan Chai has been going on for about an hour, and it's expected to end at 9 o'clock.
Now, it's part of the government's efforts to reconnect with citizens and to find an end to the city's political crisis. 150 randomly selected participants are taking turns to ask questions and to air their grievances. So far, questions have mostly been about police handling of the recent protests and calls for political reform in the city.
4 members of Mrs. Lam's government have joined her to help address their concerns. But outside the stadium, hundreds of protesters have gathered and are blocking the roads.
Now, we have reporters inside the stadium and out in the streets as well. And Leong Wai Kit joins us live now. Now, Wai Kit, can you tell us what's the situation outside the stadium at the moment, and are there any sign of protesters there?
Well, Angie, the protesters here have been gathering since 5 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time, and right now the latest is that the laser pointers are out. They are pointing at the building, this Queen Elizabeth Stadium, and people have been reacting quite wildly by the laser pointers. Every time the laser pointer races across the building, people started cheering and clapping. Like I said, the crowd started forming as early as 5 p.m. and since then I've seen several developments. There have been, scuffles between civilians. These are groups of civilians with different views. There have been 2 arguments which I witnessed, and earlier at around 5:45 Singapore Hong Kong time, convoy of black vehicles tried to drive into the car park at the stadium. At least one man tried to immediately rush to the middle of the road, tried to block the convoy of vehicles because he believes Chief Executive Mrs. Carrie Lam was in one of those vehicles. He was, of course, very quickly escorted to the side of the road before he could do any further damage or to himself or to members of the public. But right now, as far as my eyes can see, I would estimate around 200 to 300 people on the street level, and they're waiting and chanting slogans outside the dialogue venue, no doubt waiting for Mrs. Carrie Lam to finish. And if there's only one entrance and exit to this stadium, she's likely to be driving past behind me. And we will keep an eye out on what sort of arrangements the police will have when Mrs. Carrie Lam makes her exit.
Yeah, we are expecting the dialogue, Wai Kit, to end at around 9 p.m. in about an hour's time. Do you get a sense that there could be something that could happen where you are? We can hear the noise behind you. They do seem to be quite loud with the chanting.
Well, that's right. I think all early signs are pointing towards possible scuffles. For one, the police are expecting it. We've got 3,000 police officers on the standby, and 2 protesters have been calling one another out tonight to try and surround Mrs. Carrie Lam at this venue. And 3, today is a significant day because this is the first dialogue that Mrs. Carrie Lam has with Hong Kong citizens since the political crisis started in June. And based on historical events, any significant dates such as anniversaries would likely end up in scuffles. During one of the press conferences that Mrs. Carrie Lam holds every Tuesday, I got a chance to ask her a few questions. One of them was about security, and she says that if going out to meet people is going to cause major tensions, then the government will have to think twice about this approach. Now, there was no time for me to ask her what she meant by major tensions, because in the past 3 months we've seen scenes like fire being set on barricades, we've seen pepper spray, tear gas being fired, water cannons spraying water jets at protesters. We've seen videos of protesters purportedly beating police officers, videos of police officers purportedly beating protesters. So all these can really be categorized as major tensions. So there was no clarification on that, but one thing is for sure, tonight, if there's violence tonight, the level and type of violence is likely to shape the way dialogues are going to be held or where they're going to be held moving forward.
Yeah, many thanks for that, Wai Kit, for keeping an eye on it for us. Leong Wai Kit reporting from outside the Queen Elizabeth Stadium in Wan Chai, where Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam is meeting with members of the public. Roland Lim is inside the venue at the dialogue, where the dialogue is taking place, and we'll be speaking to him a little later in our program.
Well, not too far from the stadium, a group of social workers has formed a human chain from Wan Chai MTR station to Leighton. And our correspondent Afifa Arfin is monitoring that protest, and she joins us live now for the latest. Now, Afifa, have a lot of people joined this protest, and what's the turnout like so far?
That's right, Angela. Well, it's quite a different scene from where YKIT is at earlier outside the Queen Elizabeth Stadium. Here I'm at Lee Tung Avenue. This is just a stone's throw away from the Wan Chai MTR station. And I was here at about 7 p.m. Today, about an hour ago. And already dozens of people have arrived here to start a human chain along this avenue towards the Wan Chai MTR station and along Queen's Road East. Now, this human chain is being organized by members of the social services sector, and so far, like I said, dozens of people have arrived. They're actually not sure just how many other people will be joining, but they are hoping that more people would come to join. So when I was speaking to some of them who were here much earlier, I asked why did they decide to join this. They said this is the smallest part that they can play in this protest movement here in Hong Kong that we've seen for the past 17 weeks now. And they tell me that, you know, even if the dialogue session is not going on, they would still take part. Now, this human chain is set to go on until about 9 p.m. Today, but as we know, that's also the same time when the dialogues will, with Mrs. Carrie Lam and 150 Hong Kong residents will end. So that's something that we have to look out for, because with this rally that's sort of being very peaceful now, it could become a potential flashpoint later this evening.
Right, thank you so much for that update, Afifa. We were speaking to our correspondent, Afifa Arifin, in Hong Kong.